Hi, everybody. My name is Matt MacArthur, and I am running for Congress in the Texas 13th District. For those of y'all who don't know, I'm making some of these short videos. My niece laughs in the background when I say that, about various issues pertaining to this campaign. And I'm doing it on YouTube because so often we have to can short answers down to 30 seconds at a forum or a meet and greet. So I wanted a venue where I could go into a little bit more detail. Now, for those of y'all who are asking about the website and the Facebook page, and specific to mortgages for tiny homes, let me go into a little detail and explain some of that. Now, Spur, Texas, where I live, is considered the tiny home capital of the world. We don't have minimum size restrictions on our houses, so people that want to live in a 200 square foot house are able to move to Spur and do it. Now, in getting to know some of the people that have tiny homes, I've realized that it's incredibly hard for them to get a mortgage. Same with people who want to do some non-traditional construction or have non-traditional things brought in, like instead of a conventional air conditioning system, they want to use the geothermal, or people who want to take their house off the electric grid and run it off wind or solar. They can't get mortgages for that because it's considered non-typical construction. What I'd like to do, and to clarify, what I'd like to do, because we have government-backed mortgages. Some of y'all probably have FHA mortgages, Federal Housing Administration. So you're familiar with the federally backed mortgage. It just means the government will basically make sure a portion of it's paid. Though it turns out to be a fairly profitable system, the 2008 mortgage collapse notwithstanding. But right now, the numbers I have tell me that last year 3 million people applied for mortgages that would have normally gotten one. They had the right credit, the right down payment, and so on, but they couldn't get them because banks don't want to back tiny homes or non-typical constructions. And I think that that's a viable solution to make for cheaper housing. Tiny homes are cheaper. They also use a lot less in the way of electricity. And for those of y'all who know, most electricity is produced by fossil fuels. So tiny homes and a lot of your non-typical constructions are built to combat that. Now, I come from the oil and gas industry, and it is the most efficient way to produce our energy. However, if somebody wants to do it cleaner, I'm behind them. Somebody wants to run their home off wind or solar, absolutely. If we can do it cleaner, we should. It's just right now we've allowed the banks and we've allowed certain big corporations to decide what size a house should be. I know around Houston, a lot of them had to be a minimum of 1,500 square feet because they wanted to keep their property evaluations up. Well, what does a person that's single need a 1,500 square foot house for? They don't want to rent an apartment because instead of paying rent, they want to build equity. And to be fair, home ownership is the easiest way to get out of poverty. Oftentimes, it's cheaper than renting. So I want to see a system, and part of this is going to be legislation, part of it's going to be just tweaking regulation that would allow people who want to live in tiny homes or homestead or have some non-traditional construction to have the chance to do so, provided they have the appropriate credit, they have the down payments and that sort of thing. They can prove income and prove that they'd be able to continue paying for it. If you watch a lot of I think it's HGTV that has the tiny home, yeah, they're nodding at me, that has the tiny home show, there's obviously a market for it. There's an interest in it, and I think that's something that would be useful. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does that help District 13? Well, as it applies to Spur, Texas, a lot of people had moved out of Spur, and so they had a lot of vacant lots they couldn't figure out what to do with. So, not like a whole lot of people are in a hurry to move to small towns in the Panhandle or West Texas. There's not a lot of jobs here. It is a depressed area by comparison, stagnant in a way. If you don't have a job in agriculture, then it's hard to get one. And what Spur figured out is that people who wanted to live in tiny homes, they could sell them one of the housing lots that had been abandoned and the city or county ended up with, and people could come in and put a tiny home on it. And housing lots typically weren't very big, but it generated a little money for the city and the county, and it brought in some new faces. Not as many as they would have liked, but it brought in some. And many of the people who have come in have been of benefit to the city of Spur. It's brought in new people that bring their own jobs, their own salaries with them. And it's actually been quite nice having some new blood come into town. A lot of the cities and counties in District 13 are in the same pickle. Towns that in the early 80s were 3,500 or 5,000 people are now down to 800 or 1,000. All these cities have vacant houses. homes that people just can't sell. And by opening up some of the non-traditional mortgages to come in, it would allow people to buy some of these homes. People that have the ability, especially in towns like Spur where we have great internet, a lot of people are working online now, so their job's on the internet. They don't have to live in Dallas or Houston. They can live somewhere smaller, somewhere quieter like they want, somewhere cheaper. And this would allow some of these small towns to bring people in. I mentioned they hadn't had as many tiny homes built in Spur as they would have liked. I started asking around. We have land aplenty. We have interest aplenty. I mean, I hear all the time about tiny home people inquiring about moving to Spur, and I'm like, then why aren't they here? You know. Anyway, the number one answer I got from talking to all of them was financing. If they didn't have the 20 or 30,000 to buy the house they wanted because they were smaller than typical or had something about them, they couldn't get a functioning mortgage. And Roaring Springs also was advertising just outside of it. They're advertising that tiny homes can move in. I've seen them in other towns. And then you have the small homes, the ones that are in the 300 to 500 foot range, I think is how they classify it. I've seen a couple of those up near Quanah and some places like that in the district. Being able to set up a mortgage system like that, like I'm talking about, where we tweak the regulations, we tweak what FHA requires or doesn't require, it would allow these small towns to market for folks that want to live somewhere smaller, that want a cheaper cost of living and that sort of thing. Also for homesteaders. Guys, in the Panhandle, we got a lot of wide open land. We've got some people that want to homestead it, set up family farms. I think they should be allowed to have financing. If they can prove that they can afford it, they should be able to do it. Now, a question I got the other day had to do with mobile homes, manufactured homes, that sort of thing. Now, I would like also, in the same line as helping with tiny homes and with the homesteaders, I'd like to make it easier for people to get a mortgage to buy a manufactured home or a mobile home, especially if they own the land for it. And in this district, a person can buy a housing lot fairly inexpensively, usually under a couple $1,000s. But getting a home built on it is incredibly hard to finance if it's mobile or manufactured. Now, it's important to me that people have home ownership available to them. One thing we have proven in the U.S. unequivocally, and most of Europe has proven it too, is that it's the most effective way to end poverty. If you can get people out of renting and getting into their own home, they're not paying rent anymore, they're building equity. That's very important. As they get older, they're not having to rent an apartment, they've already paid it off. They own a home, that's a bill they can cut. That is immensely valuable for retirement. It's also an asset they can borrow against, which is really handy if they want to start a business or send the kids to college. Home ownership has been proven over the 20th century, and actually longer now, so basically going back to the early 1900s, we have proven that home ownership is about the number one way to get people out of poverty. And I want to continue that trend. But at the same time, we don't need to keep putting in large subdivisions with more house than people need. We need to allow people to build the homes that they want and that they actually need, and in the process that they can actually afford. Part of what caused the 2008 mortgage collapse was we set financing so low we were putting people into houses they legitimately couldn't afford. Not just a mortgage payment, but they're thinking, hey, I get a big house, that's awesome, I'm going to move into it. But we're putting people into a bigger house that has a larger electric bill, higher water bill, that has HOA fees they didn't necessarily factor in. And a lot of the people that got into a problem in 2008 got into it because of those outside issues. This allows people to get into a home where they can know all the costs ahead of time and a home they could absolutely afford. And the same can go with mobile homes, manufactured. I've lived in a mobile home myself. I liked it. I like my house now better, but I like my mobile home. It was certainly a great starter house. So that's basically where I want to go with this plan. I want to make sure that people who don't necessarily have a lot of money can still have that dream of home ownership. Put their house on dirt that's in their name. Have a dog if they want. Run a business out of it. Do their thing, but build equity instead of paying rent. And I know some of the people, especially in my party and some of the people running, don't necessarily like that. They make their money off renting properties, I get it. But my concern is for the people of this district. I want affordable housing for them, because if we can't provide affordable housing, how are we going to bring in our teachers, our police officers, and everybody else that we need to make this district of ours work. And I want to help the small communities who have reached out for these types of folks that want to build a tiny home or homestead. They need a little bit of help. Now, we already back mortgages. We spend a lot of money backing mortgages. And where we lose money, it's typically because we backed a mortgage and put somebody into a house they couldn't afford to maintain. This plan fixes that. It puts people in houses they can maintain and is what they need. Anyway, if y'all have any questions about it, MattMacArthurForCongress.com. Look me up on Facebook. And feel free to watch some of the other videos on this channel. Like I say, I go into depth on several issues, and the purpose of these videos are so y'all can know where I stand a little more at length. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I hope you vote for me March 3rd.